Hey, welcome. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on Angular. It's one of those super powerful frameworks that builds the web apps we use every single day. We're going to break it all down to the basics, nice and simple.
I mean, just think about your email client or your online banking app. They've got tons of features, right? But somehow they just work. They feel organized. So how in the world do developers keep all of that from turning into a total mess? Well, it all comes down to having a really solid foundation.
And that foundation, a lot of the time, is a framework, which is different from a library. See, a library is like a toolbox. You've got a job to do, you open the box, you pick out a specific tool, and you use it. You're in charge. But a framework, oh, that's the blueprint for the entire house. It tells you where the walls go, where the kitchen goes. It basically calls the shots, and you build your code inside of its structure.
To put it a bit more formally, a framework like Angular is opinionated. Now, what that really means is it has a strong point of view on the right way to build an app. And while that might sound restrictive, it's actually amazing for big projects because it creates consistency and helps the whole thing scale up without falling apart.
Okay, so if Angular is the blueprint for the house, what are we building with? What are the actual bricks? Well, in Angular, the most fundamental, most important concept you need to get is the component.
And I mean that literally, everything. The header up top, that's a component. The navigation sidebar, component. That tiny little like button, you guessed it, probably its own little component. Your entire app is just a collection of these building blocks all snapped together.
So what is a component, really? Just think of it as a self-contained chunk of your user interface. And each one has two key parts. You've got the brains, that's a TypeScript class where all the logic and data lives. And then you've got the face. That's an HTML template that controls what the user actually sees on the screen. Brains and a face. Simple as that.
Right. So we have the brains and the face. But how do we get them to talk to each other? How does the data from our logic actually show up on the screen? Well, this is where the real magic of Angular comes in. It's called data binding.
Let's start with the brains. Inside our components class, we can just create a property. Let's call it title, and we'll give it a value, something like welcome to my app. Easy enough.
Now check this out. We hop over to our HTML, the face, and we use this special syntax, 2 curly braces on each side. This is like a little message to Angular that says, hey, go grab whatever is in the title property from the class and stick it right here. And just like that, our message pops up on the web page.
This whole process has a name. It's called one-way data binding. And it's called that because the data flows in just one direction, from the class out to the template. The cool part is, if you ever change that data in the code, the web page updates automatically. It's what makes modern apps feel so alive.
Okay, that's awesome for one piece of data. But you're probably wondering, what if I have a whole list of things, like a shopping cart or a to-do list? You're not going to write out the HTML for every single item by hand, are you?
No way. For that, Angular has these super handy tools called structural directives. One you'll use all the time is ng4. You basically put this little command on an HTML element, and you tell it, hey, for every single item in my list of data, I want you to repeat this piece of HTML. It's an incredibly powerful way to build dynamic lists.
So, displaying data is cool, but real apps have to be interactive, right? They need to respond when a user actually does something, like clicking a button. So let's see how Angular handles that with something called event binding. So remember how we use those double curly braces to get data out? Well, to listen for things coming in from the user, we use parentheses. You just wrap the name of an event, like click, in parentheses, and that tells Angular to start listening for that specific action.
And here's a perfect example. We're telling Angular, when this specific button gets clicked, I want you to run the save function that's waiting back in my components class. And just like that, we've connected a user's action on the screen directly back to our logic. It's that simple.
Okay, so we've seen the individual bricks, right? We have components, we have data flowing out, and we have events coming in. Now, let's zoom out and see how all these pieces come together to build that entire house. A full Angular app is really just a tree of these components. You start with one main component, kind of like the trunk of the tree, and then you nest other components inside of it, which can have even more components nested inside of them. It's components all the way down. This lets you break down a huge, complicated interface into small, manageable pieces. And Angular is always getting better. The latest and greatest way to work is with something called standalone components. It used to be you had to do some extra setup work to tell Angular about all your components, but now they can be more self-contained, which makes them way easier to reuse and share without all that extra code.
So, after all that, why does this matter? What's the big deal? Well, the Angular advantage is all about three things. First, structure. It gives you a clear path to build apps that can grow without becoming a mess. Second, consistency. When you're on a team, everyone is building things the same way. And third, it's got a powerful toolset built right in for all the hard stuff, like routing and forms, so you're not starting from scratch.
And that kind of leaves us with one big question. As web applications get more and more ambitious, is a comprehensive all-in-one framework like Angular the key to building those huge next-generation experiences? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me.